First off, say peace to Pine shame and all the damage that the white man wine did. Ghost dance, penalty is 5 million beers a year, and all that other crime did. More peace to the teachers of blind kids, to red bells and small cells, keeping their mind big. How you doing, everybody? It's another great edition of MLL Roundtable on this cold Tuesday night. You can tweet at us at MLL Roundtable, at Goldieberg, at BStout631. Today, we will do the Team USA roster, which was announced last week on the Lacrosse Network on their YouTube channel. All 30 guys. I know Brendan was a little, shall I say, mad about some selections, questioning as I texted him that cold night. I believe it was right when we had the snowstorm, too, the first of like 15, and we're supposed to get another one on Thursday. But thank you for listening to all our listeners right now. We will do a shortened show because I'm a jerk and I have to go somewhere and be somewhere at 8. But Brendan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine, man. Tired, exhausted. Just ready to discuss this 30-man roster. How about yourself, dude?
I'm doing pretty good. Somehow I just found energy for that opening, so I'm all fired up, baby. I want you to just sound off on this roster right now, because when we were exchanging texts on Monday night, you were in another world. I mean, you were just going off, and it was awesome. Like if we had like an uncensored version to like show our listeners somehow of what happened, which we could, I could post it to Facebook, but I won't do that.
Please don't.
I think it would be hilarious.
I appreciate you not putting that on the internet. Well, it just, they're sounding off the roster, and, I don't take anything away from these guys. They're all great players and whatnot. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's some guys I was just, hoping would make the team over others, and that's just, personal, hope and preference, if you will. But I don't know if I don't know if I have enough energy here, that fire you're talking about to go off like I did the other night. Yeah, I don't know why 2 or 3 of the guys like just didn't make it. And why other guys did. It doesn't make any sense. Like, some guys outshined others, and I mean, obviously there's a system that the coaches want to run. Coach Mead and Coach Petramala, Coach Cassis, and all them. They obviously want to run something specific, which is understandable. But at the same time,
were you gonna say something else?
well, I was going to say, but I mean, at the same time, it's like, how do you not pick certain players over other guys after, watching them day in and day out, especially guys that can, that play both indoor and outdoor. How do they not make the team? They can adapt to different situations, different defenses and offenses and whatnot. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so for our listeners that are tuning in right now, if for some reason you haven't heard about who made the team, who was taken, you didn't watch the video, you haven't read an article about it, either on our website for In Lacrosse We Trust, or, someone else's website, this is the deal. And I think we'll start here, Brendan.
Mm-hmm.
What was the biggest problem that both you and I had agreed on when we were texting right after it was announced is the fact that they only took one face-off guy, and they took 3 goalies.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just questions abound with that. Like, you can't, I don't know, like, our thinking the whole entire time when we made predictions was you need 2 guys just in case, well, the obvious is what happens if a face-off guy gets hurt,
Mm-hmm.
you won't have anybody. And 2, what happens, like, why do you need your 3rd goalie? You should only need 2. And also in the face-off wise, you can't have one style just going throughout the whole entire, tournament. You need to have a change-up guy, especially if, the U.S. is going to take on Canada and Jeff Schneider. I mean, let's start there. I know you were fired up about it. I'm like questioning what the hell is going on here. I mean, me and you both had Drew Adams and John Galloway in goal. Those were our locks. I mean, we both thought that was it, and they were picked. Drew Adams, John Galloway were picked. Jesse Schwartzman was actually picked as the third goalie. And then face-off wise, Chris Eck out of the Boston Cannons was the only guy to be picked. So Brendan, what are you thinking? What do you think was running through Coach Mead's head?
I don't know. I really don't know. Everybody was talking. Even Quint said, how about a swing man at the face-off? Like Steven Peiser. Peiser didn't even make it. Like, how do you talk about a swing man and talk about taking multiple guys that can face off, and your swing guys don't even make it? Let alone, you only take one Fogo.
Yeah, and what I think I saw was the reasoning behind why they only took one guy is because I forget where I read it. I think it was somewhere on Inside Lacrosse. Is that they thought that Kyle Harrison would serve as a backup, and if we really needed it, Brian Karalunas would also serve as a backup.
Mm-hmm.
Which, Karalunas wasn't really a shock to me. You had other opinions there, because I liked his versatility in terms of him being able to play both down low and up top. He was an all-pro guy in the MLL last year, so you can't really debate, that he's not good. And in terms of Kyle Harrison, that was the most shocking guy to me. I think he was the guy who was really on the bubble, especially because he it's not like he rarely plays, but in terms of against top competition, he plays on the LXM Pro Tour, which plays, once or twice every, blue moon, I guess. And, the question is, how is he going to hold up over a tournament where they're going back to back to back?
I don't know if he is. Like you said, they play once in a blue moon. Don't get me wrong. Kyle Harrison can still shoot the ball like he's like a guy in college. Mike Sawyer shooting 114 friggin' miles an hour. Like, you gotta be kidding me. But, I talked to one of the guys I work with, Joe Karpinski. He talked to Drew Adams after the game. And he asked me, how was that shot from Kyle Harrison? And it hit Drew right in the sternum. And Drew's just like, he said some words that are not radio permitted, but he was pretty fired up about it, and he was like, "Good God, if that guy can still bring."
Yeah, and you saw it also.
Bring it. He's what, 30 something.
That shot, when he did take that shot, he took it right in the sternum, like you said, and then he just kind of fell to the ground. Like I don't know about you, but I've as a goalie, you and I both played. I've taken one to the sternum, a couple times in practice, and you're kind of like, oh my God, like you have trouble breathing, and you think like, oh my God, this is kind of the end, like here we go. And then you kind of take that big first deep breath, but it's kind of weird when you take the shot and you're kind of like disorientated in a way, trying to find the ball and like clear it and complete the play instead of kind of just like falling down and saying, Mom, like it's
Mommy.
No, not to that extent, but you know what I mean.
No, yeah, absolutely, man. I give Drew Adams all the credit for just getting back in there and taking the next shot and getting right back to work. But yeah, Kyle Harrison was probably the biggest surprise out of this entire the entire announcement. And he was taken as a short stick D midi. He wasn't even labeled as a short stick D midi. Going into the tryout or going into the game, like what? I don't know what else to say. Just like what?
Yeah, when I wrote I did a prediction of the announcement that night. I did it. I think it was published on our website at like 4:30.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have him on the roster. I had a guy like I think I had Abbott, Burns, Reynolds, and I had Peiser because of the reason you mentioned before. I thought that Peiser would be good because he's a good defensive midi. He's also kind of well-rounded as an offensive guy. He played some offense at Hopkins when he was there, and the fact that he could face off. So I had him instead of Kyle Harrison. And then when I reviewed it, the only thing I could think of is why Kyle Harrison made it is either because Meade wanted another guy who could go both ways or like be more offensively heavy in terms of the defensive midfield. Like say, I have Kyle Harrison on defense. He can go in transition. He can stay on offense, and instead of having to sub on and off, you now keep that guy who was playing offense and midi on another team. Now he's on, and he has to take on Kyle Harrison, who's still quick, who still has a great shot. So, I mean, I guess that was my only thinking. He didn't have the midfield, the quote-unquote, like, offensive midfield spot for him, so he took him and put him on the defensive midfield. That's my only thinking behind it. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I completely agree with that thought. That was, after my fit,
Yeah.
I kind of thought about it, and I was like, I mean, it makes sense. If it, I mean, they also have, Drew. They also picked up Drew Snyder, who could also pull that off too. So, I mean, they had those two guys, and Matt Abbott is a third who can do that. And I do have to say, I did tell you when I do believe I did say that they would take all three Chesapeake short stick D middies, which they ended up doing, which I'm pretty happy about calling that. um, but I want to change course a little bit and head towards the goalie situation. Like you said, Adams and Galloway a lock. Schwartzman, great goalie, great guy. He's a very competitive guy, very loud. Obviously him and Petramala, he got his voice from Petramala, I think.
Yeah.
But like we've seen it time in and time again. Schwartzman just has trouble playing in the big games, and going into the FIL games, like you got to play Canada, you got to play a team like England and Japan and all these teams that are coming along, and including the Iroquois. The Iroquois are coming this year. America, wake up!
Yeah, right.
They,
All the
you,
Thompson. It's like Team Thompson.
Gee, it's going to be team. How did that happen? How did they score that one? So our goalies are going to have to be on their toes, and Galloway and Adams are two of the quickest goalies. I mean, Adams is a little bit of a flopper in a sense. Galloway is very quick, and Schwartzy. It just when he gets in those big games, I don't know what happens with Schwartzman. Something just doesn't. It's like he makes saves. Don't get me wrong, he'll make the saves and whatnot, but he just something just doesn't click in the big games, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, and that was my. I mean, you and I both agreed upon it. Jesse Schwartzman not coming up in the big spot, and all right. So let me get to this like overarching thought that I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
How much do you think? Because it applies to Jesse Schwartzman a little bit, and the same thing with John Galloway. John Galloway played out of his mind in the last scrimmage of the year. He had like 9 or 10 saves. His outlets were crisp. No rebound control, which I think is a big part of goalie play. You can tell the really good goalies apart from just the average or good goalies by how they control rebounds. Jesse Schwartzman made like 4 saves. He allowed 5 goals though. He did have that one humongous outlet pass down the field, where, you and I exchanged texts and we said, hey, how does that happen? Any guy who's played lacrosse more than like a year or two would have just checked hands on Brian Karalunas, preventing him from scoring. But how much do you think the play in that last scrimmage weighed in on the ultimate decision of making the team? Because I feel like they took Schwartzman as a third goalie because of that huge, his capability of clearing the ball right into the other zone and have them attacking right from the get-go. I mean, you saw the same thing with, Garrett Thule and Steele Stanwyck and their strong play as well.
Yeah, no, I was actually just thinking about that too. That's one play that Schwartzman is very good at. It's just his ability to find just to sneak that ball into his offensive player stick is like finely tooled. It's a finely tooled weapon. And going up against like the Canadians and the Iroquois, that's going to be something that is very the clears are going to be very, very specific. And watching the game the other day, or was a week or two ago. Yeah,
like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, watching it, clock. So at the same time, is it really like? I mean, at the end of a quarter, that's definitely a play that's a possibility, and Schwartzman's very good at that. At the same time, through the entire game, with how slow the game is going to be, is it really that much of an impact at the same time?
Right, and I don't think it was big enough of an impact at the end of that game, or at the end of the half, I should say, that he should have been put on the team. I mean, obviously when we're talking about all these players and why they should have made it and why they shouldn't have made it, we're splitting hairs here. Let's be clear about it. I mean, all these, when we talked to Coach Mike Serino of the Charlotte Hounds last weekend, he had said to us, you can take any combination of the 52 guys that are left, and you're going to have a really good team. Obviously, that's the case. But to us, when we're making the cut here, I don't think Jesse Schwartzman should have made it. And if that clear and, some of the shots he saved was the determinant of why he did make it, I don't know why he did. But let's, so I mentioned Garrett Thule and Steele Stanwick, who had really strong games. Thule was actually named the MVP of the game, along with Marcus Holman. He was really good too. Let's look at the attack. So for the listeners who don't know who's on attack, you have Ned Crotty, Marcus Holman, Kevin Lavelle, Brendan Mundorf, Rob Pennell, Stanwick, and Thule. I think that's the youngest spot on this roster. A lot of rookies on here. Holman, Stanwick, and Thule were all rookies last year. Same with Pennell. Mundorf and Lavelle are like the quote-unquote veterans, and then Crotty was the only member, Mundorf and Crotty are the only members coming back from 2010 U.S. squad. So what do you think about that attack unit?
I like it. I do. You have three quarterbacks in Mundorf, Pennell, and Stanwick. You have the finisher in Lavelle. And Ned Crotty is obviously your guy that's going to dodge from anywhere and everywhere. Garrett Thule's the big shooter from outside. I mean, that kid can, just watching him. I was at the Wings game, last week or this past Sunday and 2 weeks before that. And he tried a bunch of crease dives and it just didn't work. And then all of a sudden he launched it from outside, went right past the goalie. So obviously the kid's a shooter from outside. And then you got Marcus Holman, who is just agile, slick, and can bring it from outside. And I absolutely love that kid on the team. The one person that I really wanted to make this team who really should have was Drew Westervelt. And the reason I say that is because he is one of the most effective players on the field. We saw it at a championship weekend. When the defense pulled in, on the backside, he would sneak in behind him and be right there to finish. They pressed out on him. He was still scoring goals from the outside. Like, how do you not take a player that's that versatile in shooting? He has the indoor game and the outdoor game. He can play both. Like,
I want to give you another name too that I was really surprised about. How did Danowski not make it? He had like 49 points last year, and he's a better quarterback than probably Pennell or Crotty or Mundorf.
I mean, I don't know about Mundorf.
Right,
but
I mean, I think he is. But
Pennell and Stanwick.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. If you want to say that, like Pennell and Stanwick, I think he's much better than them.
Yeah. I mean, Danowski has a leadership ability that those two, had in college, and are trying, to find their get their footing in the MLL and two big names for their MLL team. Don't get me wrong; those two are great players. I mean, still Stanwick's passing ability is ridiculous, and Rob Pennell. Rob Pennell didn't impress me at all during that game. I don't know I don't know. Like he just kind of like shied away or shut down. I don't really know what to say about it. But I don't know if I really wanted. I'm a fan of Westervelt, and I know being analyzing this team, you can't really be in a sense a fan when you analyze. But at the same time, like just looking at Drew Westervelt's ability to shoot from inside and outside, he should have taken precedence over one or two of these guys, and that's just my personal feeling.
Yeah, and I go back to what happened with Schwartzman. I mean, how much does Thule and Holman and Stanwick's performance weigh in on their final roster spot? I mean, to be fair, a lot of people were really impressed with Holman in the beginning, like throughout. But in terms of Pennell, I personally thought he would make it. I mean, look, he broke Danowski's record in the NCAA for most points in a year, and then he came into the MLL and basically lit a torch on the league. He put up like 35 points in 9 games or something. So, I mean, it didn't shock me at all that he made it. I'm more shocked, I guess, about Steele Stanwick. I think Pennell would have made it over Stanwick. And then Danowski, you slot in there, or even Westervelt. Holman, I mean, it's just the whole entire thing of the youth versus experience. What are we doing here? Obviously, Coach Me wanted to go with youth. So we have about 10 minutes. We have a lot more to look at in terms of the midfield, defensive midfield, which we touched on earlier, and the defense. Let's go with the whole entire midfield as a whole here. So defensively, we mentioned that Kyle Harrison made it. And you had mentioned all three Chesapeake Bayhawks. So for those of listeners that don't know, Matt Abbott, lock, every single person knew it. I mean, he's just unbelievable in between the lines, defense, offense, he's fast, all that stuff. Dan Burns, Jeff Reynolds were the other two. In terms of the quote-unquote other midfielders who are slotted more as offensive guys, Kevin Buchanan, David Lawson, Matt McCready's, JoJo Marasco, who had a really strong game as well. He had 2 goals. Some of those on Schwartzman, too. Paul Rabel, Max Seaball, Drew Snyder, who can absolutely bring it from the outside. Actually, the last 3 names can all bring it from the outside. So first, Brandon, what do you think about the whole entire defensive midfield? And then what do you think about the offensive midfield that was picked?
Well, it's like we said earlier, Kyle Harrison, big surprise, but he is versatile in both offense, defense. I am not shocked that they took all 3 Chesapeake guys. I mean, all 3 of those, their teammates won, and 2, they just won an MLL championship against players that that will play in the FIL. Like Jeff Snyder and those guys. Offensively, I like it. Kevin Buchanan's very sneaky. He's an off-ball player, absolutely, great player. Matt McCready's fast kid, very agile. He did score that bouncer on Adams. He'll definitely be a threat. Busting in from. I could see him being like a spark off the bench, if you will. Booking it from midline in, and just catching that pass on the run and going right by his defender. Like said, JoJo and Paul Rabel, JoJo Marasco and Paul Rabel ran on the same line with Matt Strebel, who unfortunately didn't make it. It'll be a shame not to see Strebel don the red, white, and blue this year. Those 2 together, they're in a sense, big guys. And very physical and quick, if you will. Paul Rabel, one of, if not the best, labeled as the best player in the world. Getting MVP with his first time with Team USA in 2010. And you got Max Seabald, who can play defense, who was just absolutely versatile. And Seabald and Snyder, both of them, offense and defense. So you can keep those guys in transition. They'll, unless the subbing game is different. But Seabald and Snyder play offense, defense. Absolutely love those 2 on there.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the defensive midfield, I'm totally on par with you with the Chesapeake guys. I mean, I think the reason why me took him, and I told when we were exchanging texts, I told you about this, is that he probably. I mean, you didn't necessarily agree, like the whole entire thing. You thought Chris Schiller from Charlotte Hounds should have made it. But the whole thing was, I guess he just wants continuity, especially in a tight week where he's not going to take like 3 or 4 different guys that haven't played together and try to gel them together, know their tendencies. You have 3 guys who have all played together, know how to play together, they know their strengths and weaknesses. So that was just a smart move in terms of how I think of it. In terms of offensive midfield, I was really surprised with some selections. Kevin Buchanan, David Lawson more so than Kevin Buchanan, specifically because David Lawson did play well, during the season, but he was a rookie. He only had like 18 points from the midfield spot. I'm really shocked that Jeremy Sieverts didn't make it. I mean, the dude's unbelievable. Even Chris Bachlet tweeted out that night. He said, 2-time all midfielder, or first team all midfielder, and offensive guy, player of the. I don't think he was an offensive player of the year, but he's unbelievable, and he didn't make it over a guy like David Lawson. That just doesn't make sense to me.
No, I agree. I absolutely agree. I mean, he's right to left down the alleyway, left to right down the alleyway. He can shoot either way and score either way on the run. He's one of the best shooters on the run. How does he not make it over David Lawson? Lawson's a young guy, I understand. And they went. I mean, this team is young.
Oh yeah.
I mean, with the exception of Lavelle,
yeah.
I guess Buchanan and Harrison, but it's like. And I guess Lee Zink you could say, but how do you not make that decision? He's one of the best on the run shooters, and you don't take him. What are you, nuts?
Yeah, I mean, look at us. I mean, we're just 2 guys, Skyping on a computer here, analyzing lacrosse. But you look at the stat. I mean, granted, it's kind of like Team USA in basketball. You're not looking for an all-star team. You're looking for the guys who fit the best pieces. So, in terms of basketball, you need a 3-point shooter, a shot blocker, like a D3 type guy, 3-point shooter plus defense, and then, of course, you need the stars. So maybe that's where he's going with this in terms of taking Lawson and Buchanan and stuff. I mean, Buchanan is more acceptable. I just thought he was too old, quote unquote, for the MLL and for the the FIL championships. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a guy on a computer. Yeah. Defensively, not a lot of shockers here. I'm surprised they kind of just grouped everyone together and didn't really split them up by LSM and defense.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest shock, I'd say, is Mitch Belisle being on the team. Also, Brian Farrell not making the team. I thought he was going to be like the one sole LSM guy who could go both down low and up top.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have plenty of those guys, Brian Karolounis, Jesse Bernhardt, Kyra Hartzell, kind of the same thing. The other guys, just to go through it real quickly, Tucker Durkin, Michael Evans, and Lee Zink. I mean, Durkin and Evans are just going to blow up somebody's arm. Like, there's going to be a broken arm somewhere.
I love this defense. I'm just the one thing I do have to say is, Brett Schmidt. Why not take him? I mean, he's quick, he's physical, and he's got one of the quickest hands and sticks in the game. And he's been one of the most dominant defenders for Charlotte. Since in the MLL since he came in. But I mean, it's Petromala. Watching his Hopkins team, yesterday or like the other day playing against Ohio State, going to 3 OTs. I mean, that defense is physical, and I understand. And I absolutely love the fact that they took Evans, Durkin, Zink, Bernhardt, and Hartzell. And I'm very, very happy they took Joe Fletcher. I am ecstatic about that because that kid can flat out play. Like Jesse Schwartzman said in the interview that they did with him after at halftime, I think it was. He said, Joe Fletcher's not the flashiest guy in the league, in the game. He doesn't stand out above the rest, but he does every little thing right, and that's what you really that's what you try and teach as a coach. That's what you try and look for in a player is who's going to do every little thing right. You don't have to be the flashiest player. You don't have to make the big check and whatnot. And you have guys on this team that can do that. Lee Zink, Michael Evans and Tucker Durkin are physical guys, and they're going to make those plays. Jesse Bernhardt as well, but Joe Fletcher is that guy that's going to do all those little things right. He has a great stick up in the air, and he can knock down passes, and he just does every little thing right. And I absolutely love that. I love that they took him, and if he makes a final 23-man roster, he will be on the USA team for years to come.
Right, and the big thing about Joe Fletcher is it's really not a shock to anyone that was watching the Road to the Rockies video on YouTube that the Lacrosse Network was doing, and also in terms of our interview that we did with Kevin Cassis 2 weeks, or I should say, 2 weeks back, is he was really adamant about how well Joe Fletcher was playing.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like every single player on that squad, both in the videos on YouTube as well as the coaches, were just very, very impressed with Joe Fletcher. So it was really not a shocker to see him make the team. And what's even more impressive is he's still in college too.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy's going to be good for years to come. Like really good. In terms of
absolutely,
really, really quickly, because we only have a minute here.
Yep.
Who are the guys that you maybe think are the 30-man roster? Or, the guys who are the practice squad.
Who? Is that what you're asking?
What's up?
Are you asking, who's going to get cut?
Not cut, because they're still there in case someone gets hurt and they still practice. But who are, the practice guys, I guess?
The practice guys?
Yeah.
All right, I kind of did this the other night when I was going through my fit. All right, I got the 7 guys that are going to make the practice. I want to say Pinnell, Stanwyck, Lawson, probably Burns, Karolounis, Belisle, and Schwartzman. Those are my 7. They're going practice.
I agree with you on Schwartzman. I definitely agree with you on Pinnell. I don't know. Maybe Holman and Stanwyck are on the border. Definitely agree with you on Lawson. McCready's could be that guy too. Defensive midfield, I don't think any of them will be. I think they'll all be, they'll all be on the active roster. And I think they take one or two guys on defense. I want to say it's maybe Mitch Belisle, I want to say. I think he's the worst out of that group.
Yeah, I agreed with you on that one.
Yeah. All right, so thank you for everyone who's listening. Brendan, another great, yet abbreviated show. Go get some rest. I know you're tired, and if you guys want to chime in on who you thought was excluded from the Team USA roster but should be there, let us know. Tweet at us at MLL Roundtable, at Goldieberg, at BStout631. Here's a little music to send us out. Here we go.